in-game Ukraine. Just in the past few days, we've seen a remarkable development in the Middle East where a ceasefire proposal that had been originally floated back in May and which had been repeatedly dismissed by Israel, suddenly, within a matter of days, became implemented. It's in the final stages of getting the last T crossed and I dotted, but it looks like this ceasefire agreement is going to come into effect this coming Sunday. This is an amazing accomplishment given the fact that the Israeli government had hitherto been adamantly against entering into a ceasefire. What made the difference? In short, Donald Trump. Donald Trump sent his special envoy to the Middle East in November, where he, in coordination with the Biden administration, entered into talks with the Israeli government. Then he flew to Qatar and met with the government officials there, and basically let it be known to Benjamin Netanyahu that either accept this deal or there will be hell to pay. And the Israelis, understanding that Donald Trump was a man of his words, entered this agreement, no matter how distasteful this agreement was and how politically difficult it was for the Israelis to undertake this path. We now have a ceasefire. There's many people who now believe that Donald Trump will be able to exercise the same level of coercive influence over Ukraine and Russia and bring it into the conflict in Ukraine. But the Ukraine conflict is not the Middle East, and Russia, Vladimir Putin, is not Benjamin Netanyahu. The fact of the matter is the reason why the Israelis were able to be compelled to accept a ceasefire is that things weren't going well for Israel. Their economy was in a shambles, their military was not able to achieve victory on the battlefield, and there was a tremendous amount of domestic political turmoil facing Benjamin Netanyahu over the fact that he had yet to secure the release of hostages, etc. You compare and contrast that with the situation that Russia faces, and it's like night and day. On the battlefield, Russia is dominating. Every day, Russians are advancing, taking villages, towns, tree lines across the line of contact. The Ukrainian military is running out of resources. The Russian military is only getting stronger. Economically, Russia has been able to reverse the pressure that was intended to be placed on it by Western sanctions, and instead the blowback is devastating to the European economy, and it's not doing too well for the American economy as well. And politically, Vladimir Putin has never been stronger. Elections in March of 2024 solidified his position as Russia's premier leader. He'll be governed for another 6 years without challenge. And he has a nation that is rallied behind him, even during this time of conflict. So what makes Team Trump believe that they can put pressure on Putin? Well, the fact is that Donald Trump is surrounded by people who have a poor understanding of the realities that exist regarding the special military operation. There's an incoming Secretary of Treasury who believes that we can further sanction Russia, targeting their energy sector and bring down the Russian economy that way. But we can also do this by targeting the people that buy Russian energy, particularly India and China, and deny Russia those markets. But I don't think that this individual understands the new geopolitical reality that exists today. Russia, India, and China are sort of the big three in the big new global economic forum, BRICS. And the idea that the United States is going to waltz in and drive a wedge between these three leaders at a time when BRICS is, on the ascendancy, I think is wishful thinking. Likewise, there's people that believe that the United States can increase the level of military assistance to Ukraine, enabling the Ukraine military to achieve stabilization on the front lines that will be conducive towards the freezing of the front lines and as a precursor to a ceasefire, etc. But this is wishful thinking. I mean, as the Secretary General of NATO, Mark Ritter, recently said, Russia's defense industry produces in 3 months what the totality of NATO, including the United States, can produce in a year. Donald Trump simply can't come waltzing in and reverse that reality. You can't order things to be made when you don't have the capacity to make them. And moreover, he was elected on a mandate that said that the American people didn't want to see hundreds of billions of dollars of American economic resources pour into Ukraine at a time when many communities in the United States were in desperate need of assistance. This is even more so after the devastating fires in Los Angeles. But we have the hurricane recovery efforts in Georgia, North Carolina, Tennessee, South Carolina. We have fire recovery efforts in Maui, and we just have an America that has an infrastructure that's crumbling, a healthcare that needs taken a look at, and we have a debt that's out of control. So the idea that Donald Trump is going to be able to muster the resources necessary to reverse the tide when it comes to military resources and and how they are play a role on the battlefield is, I think, wishful thinking. Likewise, even if it was able to occur, it would take months, if not years, for the defense industry of the United States to get up to par. By that time, the Russian military onslaught in Ukraine will continue, and the Ukrainian military will continue to weaken and weaken and weaken until it ultimately collapses. I think rather than engage in this kind of gamble, the failure of which would put the United States and Russia at even greater levels of tension, leading towards direct conflict possibilities, including nuclear war, something that Donald Trump said he absolutely doesn't want to engage in. It would be better if Donald Trump instead looked at Russia realistically and understood that Russia is winning this war, and when you are winning a war, you get to dictate the outcomes. And to meet with Vladimir Putin and come up with a plan to bring an end to the conflict, which is based upon the present realities that exist on the ground. Work with Putin to come up with not just an end to the conflict, but a framework for European security, and then put pressure on America's NATO allies to accept this new reality, because this is what we're dealing with, a new reality, and we're not going to have an endgame Ukraine without it.
Scott Ritter is a former Marine intelligence officer who served in the former Soviet Union, implementing arms control agreements, and on the staff of General Norman Schwarzkopf during the Gulf War, where he played a critical role in the hunt for Iraqi Scud missiles. From 1991 until 1998, Mr. Ritter served as a chief inspector for the United Nations in Iraq, leading the search for Iraq's proscribed weapons of mass destruction. Mr. Ritter was a vocal critic of the American decision to go to war with Iraq. Scott Ritter has testified before a combined Armed Services Foreign Affairs hearing of the U.S. Senate and before the House Foreign Relations and National Security Committees. He has spoken to NATO, the United Nations, the British, Canadian, Italian, French, Iraqi, Japanese, and European parliaments. He resides in upstate New York, where he writes on issues pertaining to arms control, the Middle East, and national security.